Awesome, guys. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We have got Chandler David Smith, an absolute gangster from the door-to-door and sales space here in the US. And today we're talking everything from property to investments. So Chandler, thanks, dude, so much for jumping on with us today. Short notice,
man. Thanks for having me.
Love it, dude. Now, for everyone who's watching, who you're very well known within this industry, but for those who are quite new to solar or new to the sales industry, tell us who you are, tell us your background story, and what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So I started in door-to-door sales, I think it's been almost 13 years ago. And I was a poor college kid. I applied to a bunch of jobs, couldn't find anything good. And somebody hit me up about knocking door to door, and I had a good feeling. And so I picked up my life and moved out to LA, California to sell pest control for a company called Altera. And so my first summer, I got absolutely wrecked the first couple weeks. So I went out, a week went by, I didn't have any sales. The second week went by, I didn't have any sales. And everyone in my office had a sell or had left. So we were down to like 35 guys in the office. I was the only one that didn't have a sell. And I went out and I'd been studying, training, doing everything I could. And then finally it clicked. And once it clicked, it really clicked for me. So I sold one account, and in the next 2 hours before the end of the day, I had sold 3 more. So I sold 4 pest control accounts. And then after that, I didn't have a day where I didn't sell. I just kind of really threw down the rest of the summer. I ended up breaking the rookie record at Altera. So I sold 459 pest control accounts. Ended up making $96,000 my first summer. They got me to come back the next summer. I was hyped on it. I led a team that summer of 15 people. Again, I sucked as a leader, and unfortunately that didn't resolve itself in 2 weeks. So that first summer, I had a lot of my guys go home. I was able to pull a couple absolute studs out that the only reason they did well was not because of my leadership, but I learned a ton as a leader. And I sold even more that summer. So other than my failed leadership, I still ended up selling well, and I made, I think it was like $145,000 my second summer.
Oh, crap. That's crazy, dude.
So,
that's really good.
Yeah. So at that point, oh, what was that?
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, at that point it was kind of clicking, and I really doubled down to recruit better, to sell better. The third summer I went out, I sold well, I led a team well. I ended up walking away with, I think it was close to $250,000 my third summer. At that point, I had been researching all kinds of stuff. I'd looked into stocks and bonds and mutual funds and real estate and anything and everything. And I sat down with I was at a buddy's house, and his dad was this multimillionaire. And I was asking him what I should invest in. And he kind of broke down like what it looks like to buy real estate with cash compared to with leverage by going and getting a loan from the bank. And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, this is such an incredible opportunity. I don't know why everyone doesn't invest in real estate. And so that's what I started doing. So every year I made more and more at the company was called Altera. They changed their name to Active about 4 years in. Every year I made more and more. I grew, became a regional, and eventually became the VP of sales there. And I kind of made this rule for myself where I could live off of my passive income from real estate, and all of my sales income I would put into real estate. So I first bought a condo, and then I bought a duplex, and then some fourplexes, and then I was buying an 8-unit, and then a 20-unit, and then a 30-unit. And it just kind of grew and grew and grew until now, however many years later, I own 180 units of residential real estate and 2 storage unit complexes, and then a law firm building. And so my real estate nets me close to $1 million a year, which has been awesome. 2 or 3 years ago, I decided that I wanted to kind of like share it. I love teaching my sales reps. And so I've had dozens of sales reps that have now gotten into it that own dozens of properties as well. And I started putting it on YouTube. And at first it was kind of like, I got sick of running through the same thing teaching people how to do it, so that I could just be like, oh, go look at my little YouTube channel. Like, you can learn there. And then that started to catch on. And so I kind of fell in love with that. So over the last couple of years now, the YouTube channel has just shy of 200,000 subscribers. We're hoping to hit 200,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And I'm still buying real estate, still love being involved in sales and doing all that. And that's kind of like start to now where I'm at. So we just finished building my dream home, and I don't know, this was kind of like the dream I never thought was possible. And it's all become possible because of door-to-door and investing in real estate.
I love it. And I'm actually one of those subscribers as well, and I've been following
Let's
your
go.
journey. So
Let's go.
It's been absolutely great. It's actually inspired me to get started as well. But you mentioned about 3 years in, and your income was increasing as well. I just want to get an idea, because there may be some salespeople who can resonate with you, or many that would be aspiring to you, like myself as well. But what did the beginning actually look like for investing? I know that you spoke to this particular, your friend's dad, but how many years into sales? How much money did you save at that point? How did you feel? What were the main challenges that you experienced?
Yeah, it's a great question. Early on, I had that first year where I had, 96 grand in the bank. I had to pay taxes, but I was so cheap. So I was living on, I don't know, 10, 15K a year. Like, I was so frugal. I wish I would have invested more of that money in me, because I was just a total cheapwad that first year. And I think that's why my recruiting didn't go well, and why I didn't start buying real estate or anything. And so I kind of had to learn that lesson of, like, you got to spend money to make money. And so I was still looking into real estate, but I didn't have the courage to do anything. After the second year, I was a little better about not being so cheap. And I actually invested in a property where I was the bank. So I gave and I don't usually talk about this because I always consider my first investment when I actually bought a property, but I think I gave like a $90,000 loan to someone to buy a house, because I knew the equity in the house was massive and they couldn't get approved for a loan. But if they didn't pay me, I would get to take ownership of the house. So I was making like 9 or 10% interest on that loan that I gave, which was a great investment. The problem I realized is, one, you can get a bigger investment if you invest right. But two, I was having to pay tax on that money and on my sales income. And so I was researching more and more and reading lots of books, and found that, as you invest in real estate, you can completely defer your tax in a very legal and safe way that's not putting you in jeopardy, like land easements and a lot of the other stuff that door-to-door space people will do, where it's risky. It's just very fair, straightforward, no risk. If you're investing in real estate, you can, and I'm not going to dive into how all it works, but you can avoid a lot of taxes. And so the combination of that and talking to this buddy and reading books, finally I got the courage to buy a condo. And I was so stupid because I knew I should buy it with debt, but again, I was just so scared. So I bought the condo $70,000 cash. And when that first rent check hit, I was like, wow, this is so awesome. Like, it's not that hard to get tenants. It's not that hard to manage. And that's when I said, all right, I'm going to go all in on this. And I really didn't go all in until after that second year. So I probably had, I don't know, over 100 grand in the bank, because I had gotten that other loan back from the other one I'd done. And then I had back ends coming in from my 200,000 plus year. And so my problem was never needing more money. It was finding good deals that I was very confident in. And I've always just bought deals that were home run deals. I've never stretched the numbers. I've always negotiated really good deals. And so for me, then getting the financing on those, once I had 2 or 3 deals where I'm putting 25% down, and back then, heck, I was buying a fourplex for $200,000. That fourplex I bought then is worth $600,000 now. It's just absurd.
Love it.
And so for a down payment, I only needed 50 grand for that first fourplex I bought. And so as I got money in, anything I didn't have to spend on taxes, I was putting into real estate. And once my real estate was paying for my lifestyle, I kept my lifestyle little. And then a couple of years ago, I kind of just, I don't like this phrase, but it's true. I kind of lost my shit in realizing that that I had a lot of money coming in from my rental properties. So I started buying sports cars and built my dream home. But that part of my life didn't come till just the last couple of years. For a long time, I was just using every dime and buying real estate. And I was competing in the door-to-door space in my, Toyota Corolla, while everybody else is buying these nice cars, thinking, hey, maybe pest control isn't the place to knock doors. And I'm like, no, it is. But like, I'm spending my money on real estate. And so I don't know. I feel like I was patient, and that's kind of how it came together. And whenever I had money in, I was blowing it on real estate.
What's up, guys? Real quick, just jumping in here. If you've ever wanted to become an individual sales rep and be able to sell solar from anywhere in the world, just like I am here right now, you need to jump onto the Remote Solar Pro course and program that we've put together for you guys specifically. We've got the scripts, the sales call library, we've got every tool, every resource that you need to make your first sale this week alone. Jump onto salestalkwithsolarpros.com/RSP, mention this specific podcast and get a deal on a lifetime membership to Remote Solar Pro. Let's go, keep enjoying the podcast.
I mean, that's a really important lesson there as well. And just being frugal in the beginning, not giving in to temptations, FOMO, when all of your peers are actually buying all these sports cars and just putting that towards investments.
Yeah, because especially for sales reps, it's not that difficult to go into the sales space and then, start making a lot of money really fast, especially if you put everything into it and you just go all in. And once sales reps, they start getting money in the bank, they know that they need to invest the money. But I feel that one of the biggest challenges that we have is, who do we trust? How do we find a mentor that will guide us in the right direction? What advice would you give to anyone who's listening out there? They've got cash in the bank and they're thinking like, all right, what steps do I take right now to find the right person to listen to?
Yeah, it's a great question, because in our space, there are lots of good people to put your trust in, but there are a lot of bad people, right? And that's what's really hard, is just because you've been successful in door-to-door sales, that does not mean that you're honest or that you know what you're doing when it comes to every other aspect of life. And so that's one thing that I had to learn early on. And I think, there's part of me that wants to take credit for really surrounding myself with good people. But I also think I got lucky where I had just a great community. Like Wes Pearson, the owner at Aptive, since day one, I had a good feeling, and he's done nothing but show me incredible respect and built my trust and done that. And so a great relationship on the door-to-door side helped a ton, but then also rubbing shoulders with the people that were doing what I wanted to do was big. And recognizing that part of what they did resonated with me, and that part maybe didn't. Like, oh, I like this aspect of their lives, but I don't like this aspect. And finding that role model for each aspect of my life, because, I'm married and have 2 kids, and I wanted to make sure that I did that right. And I'm investing in real estate, I want to do that right. And I'm leading and training sales reps, and I want to do that right. And so I feel like there are lots of people that had good touches throughout my life. And it's interesting because I also think a lot of the people that I recruited made a big impact. I think a lot of times it's easy for me to take credit of like, yeah, I've got, 20 sales reps that worked for me that all have invested in real estate. And I could say that was because of me. I was the first one to invest, but dude, having that community of motivated guys that sold and worked hard and just getting their feet wet a little bit, then they would inspire me. They would find big deals. And we kind of just built this group where we were all equals and we were all crushing it. And we were all, meeting up, and all we were doing is talking sales and real estate. So we're bouncing ideas. We're bringing more people into that group. We're sharing other connections that we've made. And it just created this really cool chamber of being surrounded by the right people that are all motivated in the right ways. And so for people looking for that, I think you've got to have a combination of self-education, like get the books, look at Bigger Pockets, look on YouTube for people that are talking about it. Find the books that are ranked high for investing in real estate. Brandon Turner, he's going to be at this event. He's literally a huge role model and has become a good friend of mine. And he is like the man, that his books really inspired me. And so get that part of it where you're doing it on your own. Find a community, find people online that you look up to that maybe you never have connection with, and pull all the pieces that you find value in. And I feel like that combination of all of those was what had a big impact in keeping me in the right direction.
Yeah. Now, I mean, those are some things that have given you the investor mindset. What are some mistakes that you've seen people make when they're moving towards this direction? But for one reason or another, things just go pear-shaped and they don't begin to invest.
Yeah. If your money sits in your bank account for too long, then you start buying stupid stuff. So that's a big thing. I've seen people, they go and blow it. And in our space, it's so easy to justify stupid purchases because it's like, oh, if I have a Lamborghini, then more people will work for me, right? And like, I have a Lamborghini. I think that's cool. Like, it's fun and I enjoy it. But also, it would have been absolutely stupid for me when I only had a couple $100,000 in the bank to buy a Lamborghini. That would have been foolish. And so making sure that you're patient, even though you're in a space where it might feel like you're losing to someone else because they've got the Lamborghini, but you don't, you've got to be patient and you've got to get that money to work. Because the second you get it to work and you keep yourself poor, it's easy to stay motivated in sales, in recruiting, and in investing because you're spending that money on real estate and you're staying poor. And so there were so many times where, you know, when I go and buy a big apartment complex, I'm poor again. I've got money for reserves for the properties, but I didn't have the ability to go buy the Lambo because I honestly didn't, because I bought the property instead. So that's a big mistake people make. The other thing is people get emotional. So I've had so many people in our space that they have the money and they want to post on Instagram that they got into real estate. And so they go and they buy a terrible deal where it's like, yeah, I bought this property and it's like, awesome. And they're like, yeah, the only issue is like, I'm losing money every month on this rental property I bought. And I'm like, you did it wrong then, man. Like, that's not good. You should have bought the Lambo. So
would you say that's a symptom of, you know, being around the wrong mentors and being around the wrong advice, the wrong community?
I think so. But even more than that, I think that it's so important to dial in your story and your values and your criteria for every aspect of your life. And that includes investing, that includes who you recruit, that includes all of that. So that if you know exactly what kind of deal you're looking for, you don't settle for anything less than that. And a lot of times people say, I want to invest in real estate. And the first deal that comes in front of them, they're like, this looks cool. It has renters. Let's buy it. But they hadn't really envisioned, like, I want to get this return on my money. I want to have this kind of cash flow. I want to have this kind of property in this kind of location. They've just said, I want to buy a rental. And then they buy a rental that was actually a really bad investment. It's kind of like the guys that are recruiting and they see the kid that can't walk and chew gum and they know has no work ethic or social ability, but they're like, hey, come work for my sales team. And they know that's going to hurt their sales team. They know that's going to cost them time. It's going to cost them money, but they get emotional. They want the easy, quick fix. And you just can't take that route. And we've all done it, right? Like, I've made those mistakes. My first rental property, numbers weren't great, and I didn't get financing on it. Like, that was a stupid decision. And so I'm not saying stupid decisions can't turn good, but if you're patient and really figure out your values and your criteria for all of these aspects, then you hold to it and you make it happen rather than bending your criteria and just taking what comes at you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically don't settle for less, go in as much as you can into self-education and then use that to be able to do your due diligence on these deals.
Yeah.
And there's a training I do for all my sales reps where I go through the different kind of return and how many recruits they would need and how many sales they would need to get a certain amount of money, and then what kind of return they would need on that money to get to the passive income that they want for their lifestyle. And one of the most telling things about that breakdown is, first of all, the difference from sales. Like, you double your sales and that's massive. You double your recruits and that's massive. You double your return on the money you've made and that's massive. And so it's like, you could buy the rental property that comes first and get no return, or you could buy the rental property that's right, that takes a little more work and effort and energy, that's getting you a 20% return. And then once you start doing that consistently over a 5-year period, you've got one guy with a net worth here and one guy with a net worth here. I mean, it seems like a little difference, but it gets bigger and bigger. And that's this whole game. That's sales, that's real estate. It's so exponential if you make the right moves, if you keep your leaders happy, if you find good deals. Like, it is exponentially greater to do the right thing than the easy thing. And I think that's what they've got to keep in mind, is buying a rental property isn't cool unless you do it right. And that's one thing that I found funny in this space. I feel like the last couple of years, real estate's become more popular in the door-to-door space. And I see a lot of people using it in recruiting, and that's awesome. But if you really saw the numbers on the rentals they're buying, you'd be like, don't listen to this guy, you know? So it's a combination of all of that.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, you know, you need to look for the right deal. And in your first deal, or you mentioned that, you know, you had found a home run as well. I just want to, you know, paint a clear vision and set the right expectation for a salesperson who's watching this, who's looking to get started. How much can they actually get started with? And what does a home run deal with the right deal look like? And where should they be looking?
Yeah. So everyone is in a different situation. Okay. So when I started investing, I had, you know, a couple $100,000 in the bank, if that. And so for me, I was holding to a criteria where my cash on cash return, and just a simple breakdown for that, that's whatever money you put into the deal, you're getting this percentage out. A cash on cash is a true return when using leverage. So a lot of times people talk cap rate. If you're getting a loan on a property, cap rate means nothing to me. It doesn't do anything, because it's based if you bought the property in cash. It's not if you're using leverage. And we're in a space where leverage is so drastically different from, you know, you could get a 3% loan a year ago, and now you can get a 7% loan. Like, that's a big part of the deal. And there are all of these factors, from purchase price to your interest rate to your closing costs to all of the different parts of the deal that go into it. And so really fine tuning that criteria is extremely important. But when I started, I was holding to a 20% or higher cash on cash return with worst case expenses that I had researched in my area. Now that's massive, because you're also getting 3 to 10% appreciation with what our market's been doing. And I ended up getting 15%. So now you're getting, you know, my 20% in cash flow, another 10% in appreciation. You've got principal pay down that isn't taken into that, which is a portion of paying off your loan that's going into the actual value of your property. And so my true return on these first investments was upwards of 40 to 50% with the tax savings and other stuff. And that's what made them so crazy and so exponential for me, is I was so strict about my criteria, because I knew a couple $100,000 wasn't a lot of money, but spent correctly could be massive for me. And so for years, I've been able to get a 50% plus return on a lot of these early investments I made. And I was only putting $25,000 to $50,000 down on a loan for properties that were $100,000 to $200,000. Now, I would say in this market, you can find the kind of properties I was buying for a purchase price of $250,000 to $500,000, because the market's been crazy the last couple of years. So you'd need a little bit larger down payment, but we're still talking, you know, $50,000 to $80,000 to get into a really good multifamily rental property. And a lot of people now all suggest that they get an FHA loan, which lets them live in the property, and then they only have to put 3 to 5% down, which I didn't do. But I've got sales reps that I've taught to do that. And so they're able to get into rentals for even less and still get these massive returns if they're finding the proper criteria. But that's where I held my criteria. Now, the reason I said it depends on your situation is when I got to the point where I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars and even $1 million plus per year, I had more money to place, and finding these extreme deals was a little more difficult, but I still wanted a home run. So I would hover at about a 15% cash on cash return. And even in the last year or two, I had so much money coming in that I dropped that down to a 12. I'll never buy below a 12% cash on cash return, which after everything still gives me a true return of 30 to 40% with all of that other stuff. So that was my criteria I was holding to. I personally think no matter where you are in the journey, unless you've got millions coming in, you shouldn't settle for less than a 12% cash on cash return. And if you're a new investor, you've only got 20, 50, $100,000 in the bank, I think you should wait for that home run deal with a 20% plus cash on cash return and be smart with that early money, or invest it back in yourself so you can increase your income within the door-to-door space and get to the point where you've got more to invest, and then you can let up on your criteria a little bit. So that was a long answer. I tried to keep it simple, but hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, man. Dude, and everyone who's watching, if you need to rewind and hear this again, just keep doing rewind, because there are some like real gold bars in what you just said, man. Awesome. So I know we're running out of time. We've got Adam coming on in the next 5 minutes as well. So yeah, can you tell everyone how can they find you? Instagram, YouTube, how can they continue following the journey?
Yeah, so on Instagram, YouTube, my website, everything, if you just search Chandler David Smith, you can find all of that. And on YouTube, I put out tons of free content just showing you how to invest in real estate. I also have a real estate investing course with a community of over 4,000 people that that are part of that. So that's been really fun, and kind of my baby of helping people go from nothing to owning lots of real estate and spending their money smart. So Chandler David Smith, anywhere online should find me somewhere. So.
And they'll be able to see you. Which day do you speak at the Knock Doors to Own Doors? Is it Thursday, Friday, or Saturday?
So I believe I'm the first speaker, Brody told me. So I should be day one, like first guy out of the gate.
Let's go. Let's go. Awesome, man.
All right. Thank you so much. You've dropped some incredible advice there, and a lot of things to follow.
Hey, well, thank you so much. And thanks for having me on, guys. It was great to meet you and great chatting with you.